Today I want to talk to you about a unique situation, but is probably one of the most challenging. And that's when we're dealing with enabling behavior on behalf of the betrayed spouse. In some situations, you might be an unfaithful spouse and enabling some behavior in your betrayed spouse. But today, I want to speak to a small but yet pretty strong faction of people who are dealing with situations where they're wondering, am I enabling my spouse's behavior? And I'll tell you, it's a very common question that we receive on the website. I hear it a lot of times from people is, am I codependent? I feel like I'm enabling their behavior. I don't know how to stop the train of enablement. How do I do it? What are some good signs that I'm enabling their behavior? So today, I want to really share some instances or some examples that will help you decide whether or not you're enabling your spouse's behavior. So today, I don't know if you feel like you're enabling your spouse's behavior, but I hope this will be a review session for some of you, and for some of you, hopefully a lot of you, this will help you understand and give you some examples of enabling behavior. One of the sure signs that you may be enabling your spouse is that you constantly make excuses for their behavior. Meaning you will, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's their job, maybe it's stress, maybe it's a litany of different things. But if you are constantly making excuses for their affairs or their behavior, then I think you may be, in fact, enabling the behavior, not drawing boundaries to protect yourself. Another sign that you may be enabling is that you continue to allow destructive or hurtful behavior from your spouse without enacting any consequences to their behavior. And time again, we can sit back and really struggle with the fact that the unfaithful spouse continues to do these different things, but yet we don't draw any boundaries to protect ourselves. Another sign, and this is a bit of a humorous one, that you might be enabling your spouse is you immediately get defensive at the question or the suggestion that you might be enabling their behavior. And it's very common. I will ask people quite frequently, well, after such a dark, painful story, what's keeping you in the marriage? Or, after, going through so much, do you feel like maybe you're enabling the behavior? And if you get defensive at that question, or if you immediately get angry at that question, then you may be feeling a bit of conviction or a bit of displeasure at the fact that you might be enabling their behavior. Another good sign of enabling behavior is when you make excuses for your spouse not taking responsibility. It can be as simple as, I was talking to someone the other day and they said, well, my spouse is in medical school or is, travels for a living, but they're still acting out or they're still caught in this affair. And so turning a blind eye or making excuses for their behavior in many ways can continue to enable the affair. And I know that it's incredibly challenging, and these situations are so unique and so difficult and so painful. But there is a way out, and it's going to take a strategy. But as long as we continue to enable the behavior, we're going to get more and more frustrated, which leads to more and more anger, which leads to more and more impatience, and now we've got contempt, and we're even further down the road of hopelessness and despair than we were when the affair came to light. Another important variable in enablement is if you feel the inability to express any emotion or displeasure on your end. If you feel like you can't express emotion, if you feel like you can't simply talk about your pain and your hurt, and the agony of betrayal. Now, I'm not making excuses for throwing things and raging and all that, although, listen, this is some of the most painful and debilitating trauma that you will feel as a human being. And so you can't just operate within the lines all the time. But if you feel like you can't express emotion, if you feel like you can't talk about your pain, I'm sorry, but you may be enabling the dysfunctional behavior that's swirling around you. A difficult one is when you, very frequently, prioritize the needs of the unfaithful, or if they're an addict, but you constantly prioritize the needs of the unfaithful over you. And I'm sorry, you can only do that for so long before resentment and anger and rage creep in, and now we've got an even bigger snowball heading in the wrong direction because you have constantly prioritized their needs over you, the betrayed. And I'm sorry, you have to protect you. It's not self-indulgence. It's not self-absorption. It's self-love. And one of the biggest principles of caring for yourself is making yourself a priority. Even though your marriage is uncertain and the future may be uncertain, you can still work on you. And so you can't constantly put the unfaithful spouse as more important than your own healing. You have to draw a line. And you have to come to the point where you say, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I can take care of me. If I don't take care of me, who's going to take care of me? My unfaithful spouse is in this fog or limerence, or they're all over the map. I have to prioritize my own healing and my own trauma care, maybe, and my own preservation, because if I don't make myself a priority, who is going to do that? Another telltale sign, if you will, is the refusal to draw boundaries around yourself. I say this quite frequently. I've done a number of video blogs about it, but typically people or addicts will sober up at the threat of loss, pain, or consequences. And if you're not willing to draw boundaries and protect yourself, and if you're not willing to allow the unfaithful spouse who's refusing to quit or stop their behavior to experience loss or pain or consequences, they're probably not going to sober up. They're probably not going to stop their behavior. And I would be willing to bet that they're not going to stop acting out and just, supernaturally wake up one day and say, okay, here we go. They probably have already tried that, and it's not worked. Their willpower, their white-knuckling ability is not going to be able to help you both heal. Finally, it's very common in enabling situations that a betrayed spouse will try and draw lines in the sand or deliver consequences or boundaries or threats or ultimatums and then not follow through on them. And when that happens, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but you're only reinforcing the dysfunction. You're only reinforcing the fact that the unfaithful or the addict or both is not going to respect you. They're not going to believe that you're going to follow through on what you're saying you're going to do, which leads to more disrespect and more contempt and more refusal to stop acting out. So before you decide, okay, I really mean it, one of the best things that you can do, if you feel like you struggle with enabling, you should get help from an expert that can help you care for yourself, that can help you start some recovery work for you. Because before you draw that line in the sand, before you start those boundaries, you better make sure that you're willing to walk out the consequences for you should those boundaries bring about some pain or bring about some difficulty for you, because it's going to be worth it. It's always worth it to protect yourself mentally and emotionally and even spiritually. It's always worth it to stand if you come from faith for righteousness. If you don't come from faith, it's always worth it to stand for self-love.